Tonight, Indiana's energy politics look like a bad HOA meeting. The feds tinker with the economy like it's a Mr. Potato Head. Later, we'll dive into communism versus socialism, because apparently I like pain. You're welcome, America. Welcome back to Hold 'em Accountable. I'm Derrick Holder, your tour guide through the swamp of politics, except my airboat is sarcasm and my life jacket is caffeine. Here's the plan. 15 minutes of Indiana and national nonsense, two weird Indiana stories that sound like a rejected SNL skit, and then our feature, Communism versus Socialism. Because nothing screams fun podcast like explaining Marx while you're trying to fold the laundry. Let's do this. Let's talk about Indiana and energy, because apparently renewables are now a matter of patriotism, at least according to Indiana's Secretary of Energy, who blasted local communities for putting moratoriums on wind and solar projects. She literally called building a wind farm patriotic duty, which is bold. Patriotism used to mean storming Normandy. Now it's filing zoning permits for solar panels. Next up, the Purple Heart for surviving a town hall meeting on turbine noise? Here's the issue. Indiana desperately needs energy expansion. We've got data centers coming, we've got growing demand, and people still want their air conditioners to work in July. But local counties? They keep slamming the brakes. Why? Because, quote, we don't want to ruin the view. And listen, I get it. Nobody wants a 600-foot turbine in their backyard. But this is Indiana. Our view is corn. I promise. The corn will forgive you. So now we're stuck in this weird Hoosier paradox. We want cheap electricity, but not the infrastructure that makes cheap electricity possible. It's like wanting six-pack abs without ever skipping Taco Tuesday. Trust me, I never skip Taco Tuesday. Let's break down the arguments. The pro-renewables crowd like more jobs, cleaner air, tax revenue, less reliance on fossil fuels, while the anti-renewables crowd spout noise, aesthetics, shadow flicker, property values. Don't tell me what to do. This all while I'm over here asking, can we at least put one turbine in front of AES headquarters so they get the irony? The Secretary of Energy says these bans make Indiana look bad nationally. Ma'am, I hate to break it to you, but when the rest of the country thinks about Indiana, it's not, wow, what an advanced energy hub. It's more like, oh yeah, isn't that the place with basketball and deep fried butter? Now, let's tie this into the bigger picture. If Indiana blocks wind and solar, guess what? Corporations like Amazon and Google will just build their data centers somewhere else. Or worse, they build them here anyway, but powered by coal. And then we all get stuck with the asthma bills. And they still put their marketing out. This data center is carbon neutral. Yeah, because you bought 3 acres of trees in Brazil, not because you plugged into a turbine in Tipton. So what's the solution? We need balance. Put turbines where they make sense. Cut deals with farmers who want them. Don't force them on people who don't. But also, stop pretending patriotism is measured by how pretty your skyline looks. Patriotism is keeping the lights on, folks. And if that means sacrificing a cornfield view, well, you'll live, and so will the corn. Indiana state agencies are being told to trim about 10% of their budgets. Staff, contracts, programs, you name it. Because apparently government is now on the keto diet. Fewer carbs, fewer services. But hey, maybe you'll lose that pesky thing called functionality. Now look, fiscal responsibility is a nice talking point, but here's the reality. We're not cutting waste. We're cutting people. Real people. Inspectors, caseworkers, clerks, the folks who actually make this Rube Goldberg machine we call state government operate. Imagine the BMV with 10% fewer employees. Actually, don't imagine it. You'll never get your license renewed because you'd still be in line by 2030. The state says it'll save money in the long term. But you know what also saves money? Not fixing potholes, not inspecting nursing homes, not processing unemployment claims. until, of course, all those things collapse and suddenly the savings cost 3 times as much. It's a classic penny wise, pound foolish move, like skipping oil changes to save $40 when acting shocked when your engine explodes on 70. We have to live within our means. Yeah, that sounds great until you realize the people actually living within their means are the social workers now handling 120 cases instead of 80, or the teachers losing grants that funded after school programs, or the public health offices trying to run clinics with half their staff. And here's the kicker: the cuts aren't optional, they are mandated. Every agency got the memo: trim the fat. And by fat, they apparently mean the people actually doing the work. You know what would save money? Maybe not handing out tax breaks like candy to corporations that promise jobs and then disappear faster than your cousin's crypto startup. But no, better to cut state staff so some politician can brag about balanced budgets. Here's the bottom line: you can't run government like a business because businesses can just decide not to serve unprofitable customers. Government doesn't get to say, sorry, rural Hoosiers, no fire stations for you. We're pivoting to TikTok advertising. This is about priorities. If the choice is between helping Hoosiers or keeping lobbyists happy, we've seen which way Indiana leans. And spoiler, it's not towards you and me. Pete Buttigieg came back to Indiana to fight gerrymandering. And let's be honest, this takes guts. He could be sipping lattes in DC or writing another book with a 12-word title. Instead, he's in Indianapolis, standing in front of a GOP bulldozer with nothing but a microphone and sheer Midwestern stubbornness. Redistricting is carving up voters like a Thanksgiving turkey, except instead of feeding your family, feeds politicians' egos. Pete's saying, hey, maybe voters should pick their politicians, not the other way around. Crazy idea, right? Here's where it ties into our big story. Pete's pushing for fairness and how we divide political power. It's the antidote to socialism for politicians, where they redistribute voters like coupons. Buttigieg isn't just making noise, he's trying to prove democracy still works in Indiana, one oddly shaped district at a time. Let's be clear: in a political climate where courage is rarer than bipartisan hugs, Buttigieg showing up here is heroic. Somebody get the man a cape, or at least a decent Hoosier tenderloin. Indiana's got a little problem right now. The state's utility referee, the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, or the IURC, for the three people who can pronounce that acronym without sounding like they just sneezed, is down a few players. They've got vacancies, empty chairs. And wouldn't you know it, this just so happens to be the exact moment AES, one of our big power companies, has decided to stroll in and say, hey, you know what people love? Higher bills. They're asking for a 7.5% rate hike now and another 6% later. That's basically saying, here's your appetizer fee increase. Don't worry, the entree will be even more expensive. Now here's why the vacancies matter. Regulators are the referees of the game. Imagine if the Pacers played the Lakers, but were no refs. Every time LeBron traveled, he just looked at the empty court and said, that didn't count. And guess what? With fewer refs, AES is basically LeBron, and you, Hoosier bill payers, are the guys stuck paying $12 for a hot dog in the nosebleeds. And let's be real, when corporations smell weak oversight, they don't think, we should be responsible citizens. They think, how many zeros can we add before anybody notices? AES says the increase is necessary for infrastructure and modernization, which sounds great, except we've all seen what modernization means. Usually, it's code for we've upgraded the lobby, but your power lines still collapse in a thunderstorm. And here's the kicker: AES isn't just supplying your home. They are also gearing up to feed giant new data centers: Amazon, Meta, Google. They're all lining up with extension cords plugged into Indiana soil. Guess who pays for the privilege of keeping those server farms humming? Spoiler, it's not Jeff Bezos. So we've got two overlapping stories here. A regulatory agency missing referees and a power company using the moment to slide in double-digit hike. Meanwhile, regular Hoosiers are over here debating whether to run the AC or pay for groceries. But sure, let's cut a break for billion-dollar corporations with data farms the size of Monrovia. And the cherry on top? These vacancies at the IURC will likely get filled by, you guessed it, political appointees, which means the only question left is will they side with consumers or with the guys buying luxury box seats at Lucas Oil? I'll give you a hint. History rhymes, and it usually rhymes with corporate. So brace yourselves, Indiana, because if your utility bill suddenly looks like a student loan payment, you'll know exactly why. AES asked for it. The refs weren't there, and your elected leaders were too busy taking selfies at ribbon cuttings. Okay, now Monrovia just got even spicier than usual. The Morgan County Planning Board held a rezoning vote on a proposed data center in Monrovia. And trust me, this isn't your grandmother's zoning meeting. This is where spreadsheets go to die.
It will affect our groundwater, our water table. It will raise our utility bills and increase our taxes because these people are coming in here with TIF districts and tax abatements. And so somebody's going to have to pick up that bill, and guess who's going to be? Us.
I think data centers are just dangerous for our environment, for our community. We don't even know the whole impacts of it. It uses too much water. Wells could go dry. The noise level is a concern.
Residents argued farmland loss, traffic, water strain, heat. The board argued economic development, jobs, tax base. The tension was real. At the end, the board voted to approve the rezoning. Yep, they green lit turning whatever that field was into a server farm. If your property value drops and your power bill climbs, you'll know who to call. So Monrovia joins the league of places that wanted progress, just forgot to invite community trust to dinner. Meanwhile, in Martinsville, people gathered under candles and prayer to mourn the victims of the Grand Blanc, Michigan mass shooting. It was an interfaith vigil. Mormon, Presbyterian, Baptist, and Jewish congregations stood together, lighting candles in solidarity. It was somber. It was healing. It was something that we don't see often in the news. People coming together across traditions.
It's an attack on all of our houses, and we must stand united as people of faith against violence. We must reach out to one another and love one another. Days in our land that folks respect each other's choices and options. What a great place we have to worship freely. My prayers are with you. I stand with you. And loving our neighbors, we're at that.
For I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Nothing can separate us from the love of our Heavenly Father.
The hope that Martinsville might forge a permanent interfaith alliance, one with more light and less division. Because when bullets try to break us, candles and prayers remind us what's stronger. All right, buckle up. This one is juicy. Late night host Jimmy Kimmel got suspended. Yes, suspended. That's right, Disney and ABC yanked Jimmy Kimmel Live off the air after his monologue critiquing the reaction to Charlie Kirk's assassination. They said it was ill-timed, insensitive, under review. Translation, they didn't want the FCC breathing down their necks. FCC Chair Brendan Carr had already threatened broadcasters that aired Kimmel might face penalties, so Disney hit pause. Then backlash exploded. More than 1.7 million people canceled Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN subscriptions in protest. Unclear whether all those cancellations stick long term, but the message was loud. People were mad. And when the show came back, ratings spiked. Kimmel's return episode pulled in around 6.2 million viewers, one of the strongest nights in years, despite many stations in the Sinclair and Nexstar families still refusing to air it initially. Feels a bit like that other suspension move was corporate malpractice, no? So here's what's happening now in Congress. Democrats are pushing a free speech protection bill to make sure broadcasters can't be threatened off the air by regulatory pressure. The aim? Safeguard satire, commentary, and dissent. Because if Jimmy Kimmel, a comedian, can be silenced by threats of fines and license revocations, what's next? News anchors? Podcasters? Bloggers? Heck, maybe me next. Though I'd like to think I've got enough sarcasm to survive. Kimmel, by the way, was in the bathroom when ABC executives called to tell him the show was being pulled. He said, "I thought it was over." He returned, addressed the controversy, apologized where needed, defended the role of satire, and rode the wave of public outrage right back to his desk. Sinclair and Nexstar initially said they would continue to preempt the show, even after Disney reinstated. Then after pressure, they dropped the blackout and returned Kimmel to the lineups. So, to recap, Kimmel gets reinstated, Disney and ABC quietly backpedal, big media affiliates reverse course, people cancel streaming subscriptions, and Congress starts talking about law changes. That's not chaos. That's a full-on temper tantrum with bipartisan consequences. Free speech doesn't just protect what's popular. It protects what's uncomfortable. If satire, comedy, and dissent can be silenced through regulatory pressure and corporate fear, then the first becomes a decoration, not a protection. So keep your eyes peeled, because if Disney can pull this on Kimmel, tomorrow they might pull it on your local radio host, or me. And all it takes is one threatening memo, one license warning, one phone call. You'll hear this. We can do this the easy way, comply, or the hard way, lose your license. And if that doesn't sound like intimidation, I don't know what does. All right, let's talk about the Pentagon, because apparently Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of War and human embodiment of a Fox News chyron, has decided that the biggest threat to America isn't China, isn't Russia, it isn't TikTok. No, it's leaks. The Pentagon is rolling out a crackdown requiring mandatory non-disclosure agreements and random polygraph tests for thousands of civilian and military staff. Yeah, random lie detectors, like airport security, but for your soul. The idea is to stop sensitive information from slipping into the press, which sounds fine until you realize most of the time those sensitive leaks are just people trying to warn the public about dumb decisions happening behind closed doors. You know what would actually stop leaks? Not doing embarrassing things in the first place. Polygraphs, by the way, aren't exactly reliable. Scientists have been dunking on them for decades. They don't really detect lies. They detect whether you're nervous. So basically, the Pentagon is about to spend millions on high-tech mood rings. And NDAs? We're not talking about don't spoil the new Marvel movie. These are binding legal gags. One wrong word at the water cooler, and boom, you're out of a job. Maybe worse. So, let's recap. The Pentagon is acting like your paranoid ex, checking your texts, slapping NDAs on everything, demanding lie detectors. While the actual military threats are out there sharpening their knives. Honestly, if this keeps up, the next war we lose won't be to Russia or China. It will be to a polygraph machine with low batteries. And if that wasn't enough, here's one for the history books, or maybe the blooper reel. The Department of War summoned every single general and admiral in the U.S. Armed Forces to Quantico. Yes, every one. That's like inviting every boss you've ever had to the world's most awkward HR meeting. And who were they summoned by? Drumroll, please. Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. That's right, the man who once proudly declared he hadn't washed his hands in 10 years. Nothing says trust me with the military like proudly advertising that you're a public health hazard. And standing right next to him, Captain Bone Spurs himself, the man who dodged Vietnam with a doctor's note, and now struts around like he's Eisenhower reincarnated. Picture it, hardened generals, veterans of Iraq, Afghanistan, Desert Storm, people who have literally stared death in the face, forced to sit through a pep talk from Pete, Fox News Green Room Hegseth, and a guy whose combat experience was losing a battle with a ramp at West Point. And how did the generals respond? With thundering silence. Not applause, not laughter, not even a polite golf clap. Just the sound of metal shifting as every 4-star in the room collectively thought, is this really my life right now? What could the meeting possibly have been about? A command shakeup? AI weapons? The Space Force's fantasy football draft? Or maybe, just maybe, a tutorial on how to hold a Bible upside down without spraining your wrist. Here's the thing, when generals go silent, it's not because they're inspired. It's because they are debating whether to stage a coup or just wait for history to do the job. Meanwhile, I can't even get the Indiana DNR to call me back about land permits. Priorities, America. Recap. The entire U.S. Armed Forces leadership was hauled into a room to listen to Pete Hegseth and Captain Bone Spurs. And the response? Dead air, which honestly is the most patriotic protest generals are allowed to make without accidentally starting World War III. Stay tuned. If a dozen generals resign live on Instagram, we will know that Quantico wasn't much of a pep talk. It was the world's worst sales pitch. Moving on. Guess what happens when Congress can't pass a budget? Yeah, we got another government shutdown. And this time, it's not just national parks closing bathrooms. Nope, financial regulators are shutting down. The SEC gone. The CFTC down to skeleton crews. 90% of staff furloughed. 90! That's not leaner government. That's lights are on, but no one's home. And the timing couldn't be worse. Markets are shaky. Interest rates are volatile. And now the very agencies meant to stop fraud are off duty. It's like announcing the police department is closed this weekend. So burglars, please respect the honor system. Meanwhile, IPOs frozen. Enforcement actions paused. Insider trading wide open. Wall Street basically just got an all-you-can-still buffet. But hey, at least taxpayers are saving a few bucks while billionaires loot the store. So that's nice. This isn't small potatoes. When regulators can't certify deals, inspect banks, or monitor trades, we're one bad headline away from a market crash. When that happens, Congress will hold hearings, wring their hands, and then do nothing. Because here's the truth. These shutdowns aren't about saving money. They cost money. They stall projects, delay permits, screw up contracts, and then we taxpayers have to pay extra to restart everything. It's government cosplay. Except instead of dressing up like Batman, they're cosplaying fiscal responsibility while lighting the treasury on fire. So yeah, if your retirement account suddenly tanks this month, don't blame Wall Street alone. Blame Congress for handing them the keys to the vault and then leaving town. And remember, one side wanted to talk about this, the other one said, toodles! Finally, the White House has decided to expand the infamous Mexico City policy. If you don't know it, that's the one that blocks U.S. aid to foreign groups that even mention abortion services. Well, now it's being expanded to cover groups that promote diversity, equity, inclusion, or transgender rights overseas. Yes, we are now exporting the American culture war, one aid grant at a time. So let's say you're an NGO in Africa fighting hunger. If your pamphlet also says, by the way, let's respect LGBTQ plus kids, boom, kiss your US funding goodbye. This is a massive shift. We're talking about potentially millions in US foreign aid being cut off. Health clinics, education programs, women's rights organizations, poof, gone. Sorry, starving children, we'd love to feed you, but your group once had a rainbow sticker in the office. Our bad. Critics call it ideological imperialism, and they're right. It's the US saying, we'll help, but only if you align with our political talking points of the month. And the irony? The same people screaming about big government overreach at home are now micromanaging nonprofits 5,000 miles away. Because nothing says small government like dictating NGOs decorate their bulletin boards. This policy doesn't just affect abstract groups overseas, it affects real people, nurses, teachers, parents, who rely on that funding to keep the lights on. America's soft power has always been about ideals, freedom, equality, opportunity. But right now, we're exporting division, and sooner or later, that bill comes due. All right, Indiana football has made headlines again, but not for touchdowns. No, this time it's for cooking gamblers' bets like Thanksgiving turkey. Here's what happened. IU's quarterback had the ball. The game was basically over. Victory locked in. All he had to do was run out the clock. But instead, he decided to run backwards into his own end zone, voluntarily, handing the other team 2 points. Why? To preserve the win, but completely torch the betting spread. So instead of fans celebrating, you had sports bettors crying into their DraftKings apps. The QB later apologized, saying, quote, "Sorry I cooked people's spreads. Sir, you didn't just cook them. You nuked them. You dropped them in a fryer like a pork tenderloin at the Indiana State Fair." Now let's be clear. What he did wasn't technically against the rules, but it's definitely against the rules of common sense and absolutely against the sacred bond between gamblers and their bad decisions. And you know who's most disappointed? Hoosier the Bison. That's right, I used mascot from Weird News last week. Even Hoosier, who once made headlines for wandering around like a 2,000-pound tourist attraction, is shaking his furry head like, really? That's how you're gonna represent the state? I trampled fewer bets just grazing. The optics? Terrible. Because suddenly, you've got whispers. Was it strategy? Was it shady? Did somebody place a bet? Or was it just the dumbest football play since the butt fumble? Personally, I think the kid just wanted to trend on Twitter, and hey, guess what? It worked! Bottom line, IU still got the win, but gamblers got hosed. And if you listen closely, you can still hear the sound of parlay tickets being torn half across the Midwest. Welcome to Indiana football, where the wins are real, the spreads are imaginary, and the heartbreak is always free. Just ask Hoosier the Bison. And now, let's talk about the Mystery Dome. Because nothing says Indiana weirdness like a UFO-adjacent structure popping up in a neighborhood after a storm. This happened on Indy's east side, Pasadena Street near 19th. A storm rolls through, power lines down, trees uprooted. And when the clouds clear, boom, there's a giant dome sitting on the street, just like it spawned there. Nobody knows where it came from. Nobody saw who put it there. The neighbors walked outside like, did we get a new planetarium? Of course, theories went wild. Is it art? Is it a storm shelter? Is it the world's most ambitious chicken coop? Or, and this was my favorite, is it an alien outpost? Because if low green men pick Indianapolis's east side as their landing pad, it explains a lot. Honestly, it looks like a cross between a bouncy castle and a Cold War bunker. If it turns out to be a new vape shop, I wouldn't even be surprised. The city says they're investigating, which, let's be real, means they're waiting for someone to come claim it. Meanwhile, the dome has become a selfie hotspot. Kids, families, TikTokers, all out there snapping pics like it's the world's weirdest roadside attraction. So let's take a breath and step back. What have we seen tonight? We saw Indiana's policy roundup, where energy politics looks like a bad HOA meeting. State agencies are told to do more with less. And AES is asking for higher rates while the referees at IURC are MIA. We saw Pete Buttigieg step up in the redistricting fight, proving democracy sometimes needs a hometown hero. We saw where the county board greenlit a massive data center, despite local fears. In Martinsville, where neighbors lit candles together across faiths in the shadow of tragedy. That's Indiana in a nutshell. Zoning fights and vigils, side by side. Then we zoomed out. Nationally, free speech went on trial with Jimmy Kimmel suspended, reinstated, and pulling a record viewers, all because corporations folded under government pressure. The Pentagon summoned every general in America for a lecture from Pete Buttigieg and Captain Bonespurs, and followed it with a leak crackdown so paranoid it makes lie detectors the new office coffee machine. Meanwhile, federal regulators are shuttering in funding labs, leaving Wall Street unsupervised, and the administration is expanding old foreign aid bans to punish NGOs abroad for promoting DEI or trans rights. And through all of it, Indiana still delivered its share of the absurd. Football players apologizing to sports bettors after sabotaging spreads, and a mysterious dome appearing on Indy's east side, like we suddenly unlocked a side quest in SimCity. Every one of these stories come down to the same core question. Who holds power, and who pays the price? Whether it's your electric bill, your congressional map, your Netflix subscription, or your freedom to speak, someone is deciding the rules, and someone else is footing the bill. That brings us to our main story: communism versus socialism. Two words politicians throw around like dodgeballs, usually at the wrong targets, but underneath all the noise, both are about this same question: how resources and power get shared, and who gets left out. So tonight, let's strip away the scare tactics and propaganda. Let's talk about what these systems actually mean, how America has borrowed pieces of both while pretending we haven't, and why understanding them matters right now.
Quick pit stop. Before we go full nerd, hit that like button, subscribe, and smash the bell icon just like it cut you off in traffic. Seriously, it helps the show, and it means you'll never miss an episode, whether I'm ranting about politics, potholes, or whatever else Indiana throws at us.
Communism, socialism, the two words guaranteed to turn a family dinner into the Hunger Games. One uncle yells about Venezuela. Another uncle yells about billionaires, and grandma just wants to finish her casserole in peace. So tonight, let's kill the buzzwords and actually unpack what these terms mean, where they came from, and how they've played out. And yes, even the US has dabbled in both. Spoiler, we already do some socialist things, and no, the sky has not fallen. Capitalism is basically monopoly. Private people own everything. You roll the dice, and if you're unlucky, you're selling Boardwalk just to keep the lights on. Socialism? Some properties are publicly owned, and the rules make sure you don't die broke because you landed on rent 3 times in a row. Communism? That's when the money, the rules, and the banker all disappear, and theoretically, everyone just shares the tiny green houses. Sounds neat. In practice, well, spoiler alert, communism turned into one big landlord named the government. In the 1800s, there was the Industrial Revolution. Kids lost fingers in factories. Bosses lit cigars with $100 bills. Early utopian socialists dreamt of communes. Then Marx and Engels roll up like, cute idea, here's an 800-page rant about why history is a class cage match. Some reformers, they just wanted taxes, unions, and voting rights without guillotines. That's where social democracy started. Socialism isn't one flavor. It's Baskin Robbins. Let's break them down. Democratic socialism is where workers and the public own big industries. Elections still exist. Netflix still streams. Social democracy is best explained by the Nordic model. High taxes, free healthcare, IKEA furniture, suspiciously happy people. Market socialism is where markets exist. Profits go to workers or society, not Bezos. Anarchist socialism has decentralized collectives, basically Burning Man without billionaires. And finally, Marxist-Leninist has one party in total control, and the eternal promise this dictatorship is temporary. In theory, communism is paradise. No bosses, no money, no state. In practice, the USSR had rockets and gulags. China had the Great Leap Forward famine. But yeah, communism in theory, kumbaya. In practice, Simon Says with secret police. Here's the dirty secret. America loves socialism. We just don't admit it. We have the socialist-ish Social Security. We have socialist slices in Medicare and Medicaid. The TVA provides public electricity. Public schools, libraries, and USPS are all socialism in khakis. And yet, no bread lines, no gulags. Starbucks still charges $6. Amazing. Ownership. Socialism equals some shared. Communism, everybody shares. Markets. Socialism, sometimes. Communism, nope. The state. Socialism. It can be democratic. Communism, stateless in theory. Central planning. Spoiler, they ended up with warehouses full of left shoes. High taxes kill innovation? Tell that to Spotify, Skype, and Lego. All Scandinavian products. Capitalism versus inequality? Capitalism makes billionaires and homeless camps. Social democracy says, cool, let's tax you 50% and still keep IKEA cheap. In the 1930s, in the Tennessee Valley, the people were dirt poor and had no power. FDR said, fine, we'll do it ourselves. The TVA built dams, powered homes, and stopped floods. Critics screamed socialism. Families screamed, hey, we can finally refrigerate milk. Today, it's still here. Proof the U.S. can do socialism without turning into Stalingrad. Scandinavia has a free press, elections, and comedians roasting politicians. Communist states have one party, no dissent, no stand-up shows, mocking the dear leader. That's the real difference. Can you complain without disappearing? Socialism means the government owns everything. No, public school does not mean Stalin. Communism means USSR. Wrong, the USSR was state socialism with branding. Any public program is socialism. Fire departments are not communist. Sweden, Denmark, Norway have high taxes, free healthcare, paid parental leave, and yet they also have Volvo, Lego, Nokia, capitalist companies. They're not communist. They're social democracies. IKEA is proof that you can tax people 50%, still sell furniture with 400 screws missing. What are the biggest socialist programs in the U.S.? Healthcare has Medicare. Retirement has Social Security. Energy has the Tennessee Valley Authority. And worker ownership has credit unions. We're not capitalist or socialist. We're basically a Golden Corral buffet. Little of everything and way too much orange jello. In U.S. politics, socialist means whatever my opponent said. Communist is just the scarier version of that. Definitions? Who cares? You have to ask, do you mean Sweden or Stalin? Because those are slightly different. Capitalism is good for innovation, but bad for insulin prices. Socialism is good for equality, but bad if run by BMV-level bureaucracy. Communism is good in theory, but terrible in reality. What's the best system? A hybrid. because no one wants Hunger Games capitalism or gray bread communism. Is Medicare socialist? Yeah, and Grandpa loves it. Are Nordics communists? Nope, they're happier capitalists with free healthcare. Has anyone achieved communism? Only in college dorms, so here's the cheat sheet. Socialism is a spectrum of shared ownership. Communism is a classless stream that became a one-party nightmare, and the U.S. as capitalism with socialist side dishes. Next time somebody yells about socialism, just remind them that paved roads and fire departments are socialism too. This has been Hold'em Accountable. Tonight we saw generals called without explanation. Monrovia approved a data center rezoning. Martinsville lit candles across faiths. And through it all, the same question. Who wields power and who pays the price? If Pete Buttigieg stepping into the redistricting fight is heroic, then tonight I hope Martinsville's clergy standing together was equally brave. Because change rarely happens at the center. It happens when edges get pushed inward. We don't have to be powerless. We can demand clarity, fairness, justice. We can show up because democracy doesn't defend itself. It depends on us. I'm Derrick Holder. Thanks for listening. Keep shining lights in dark places, and I'll see you next week.